How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. Introduction. Welcome to this comprehensive summary of Dale Carnegie's timeless masterpiece, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Published in 1936, this book has sold over 30 million copies worldwide and remains one of the most influential self-help books ever written. Carnegie's principles are as relevant today as they were nearly a century ago, offering practical wisdom for anyone looking to improve their relationships, leadership skills, and overall success in life. The book is built on a simple but powerful premise. Success in life depends largely on how well we interact with other people. Carnegie draws from real-life examples of business leaders, historical figures, and everyday individuals to illustrate his principles. What makes this book extraordinary is not just its insights, but its actionable nature. Every principle can be applied immediately to transform your personal and professional relationships. Part 1. Fundamental Techniques in Handling People. The first section lays the foundation for all meaningful human interaction. Carnegie presents 3 core principles that, if mastered, will fundamentally change how you relate to others. Principle 1. Don't criticize, condemn, or complain. Carnegie begins with perhaps his most challenging principle: avoid criticism. He argues that criticism is futile because it puts people on the defensive and makes them strive to justify themselves. Criticism is dangerous because it wounds a person's precious pride, hurts their sense of importance, and arouses resentment. Carnegie shares the story of how notorious criminals often saw themselves as victims rather than wrongdoers. If even the worst criminals don't blame themselves, what chance do we have of changing the average person through criticism? Instead of condemning people, we should try to understand them and figure out why they do what they do. This approach is much more profitable and interesting, and it breeds sympathy, tolerance, and kindness. The key insight here is that people are emotional creatures, driven by pride and ego. When you criticize someone, you're attacking their self-esteem, which only leads to defensiveness and resentment. Instead of criticism, Carnegie advocates for understanding and empathy. Principle 2. Give honest and sincere appreciation. The second fundamental technique is the flip side of the first. While we should avoid criticism, we should freely give honest appreciation. Carnegie identifies the deepest urge in human nature as the desire to be important and to feel appreciated. This craving for appreciation is what differentiates humans from animals. The key word here is honest. Carnegie isn't advocating for empty flattery, which is shallow, selfish, and insincere. Flattery comes from the teeth out, while sincere appreciation comes from the heart. People can easily detect the difference. Carnegie provides numerous examples of leaders who achieved remarkable results by showing genuine appreciation for others' efforts. One story involves Charles Schwab, who became the first person to earn $1 million a year working for another person. Schwab attributed his success largely to his enthusiasm and his ability to arouse enthusiasm in other people through genuine appreciation and encouragement. The practical application is straightforward. Look for things to appreciate in others and express that appreciation sincerely. Whether it's a colleague's hard work, a friend's thoughtfulness, or a stranger's kindness, acknowledging it can transform relationships. Principle 3. Arouse in the other person. An eager want. The third fundamental principle is about motivation and influence. Carnegie argues that the only way to influence anyone is to talk about what they want and show them how to get it. This seems obvious, yet most people spend their time talking about what they want instead. Carnegie illustrates this with a simple example. When you go fishing, you don't think about what you want, you think about what the fish wants. You don't bait a hook with strawberries and cream because that's what you like. You use worms or grasshoppers because that's what fish like. The same principle applies to people. If you want to persuade someone, you must frame your ideas in terms of their interests, their desires, and their needs. Carnegie shares the example of a parent trying to get their child to go to kindergarten. Instead of focusing on what the parent wants, the successful parent talked about all the fun things the child could do at kindergarten, arousing an eager want in the child. This principle requires you to step outside yourself and look at things from the other person's point of view. When you can genuinely align what you want with what others want, you create win-win situations that benefit everyone involved. Part 2. 6 Ways to Make People Like You. The second part of the book focuses on building likability and rapport. Carnegie presents 6 specific techniques that, when applied consistently, will dramatically increase how much people enjoy your company and want to help you. Principle 1. Become genuinely interested in other people. The first way to make people like you might seem counterintuitive. Instead of trying to get people interested in you, become genuinely interested in them. Carnegie emphasizes that you can make more friends in 2 months by becoming interested in other people than you can in 2 years by trying to get other people interested in you. Carnegie references Alfred Adler, the famous Viennese psychologist, who wrote that people who are not interested in their fellow human beings have the greatest difficulties in life and cause the greatest harm to others. It's from among such individuals that all human failures spring. The practical application involves showing genuine curiosity about others. Ask questions about their lives, their interests, their families, and their work. Listen attentively when they speak. Remember details they share and follow up on them later. This sincere interest creates powerful bonds. Principle 2. Smile. The second principle is delightfully simple. Smile. A genuine smile is incredibly powerful. It says to the other person that you're glad to see them, that they make you happy, that you enjoy their presence. This simple act can transform encounters. Carnegie shares research showing that smiles are contagious and that people are naturally drawn to those who smile. He tells the story of a New York stockbroker who transformed his business relationships simply by making a conscious effort to smile at everyone he met. The key is authenticity. A mechanical, insincere smile doesn't work. You must truly feel happy to see the person. Carnegie suggests that even if you don't feel like smiling, forcing yourself to smile can actually change your mood and make you feel happier, which then creates a genuine smile. Principle 3. Remember that a person's name is the sweetest sound. Carnegie's third principle recognizes that people love hearing their own names. Remembering someone's name and using it in conversation shows respect and makes them feel important. Conversely, forgetting someone's name or getting it wrong can be insulting. The challenge, of course, is actually remembering names. Carnegie acknowledges this is difficult, but argues it's worth the effort. He suggests repeating the name several times during your initial conversation, associating it with the person's face, and writing it down if possible. Political leaders, successful business people, and charismatic individuals throughout history have been masters at remembering names. Franklin D. Roosevelt was known for remembering the names of even minor acquaintances. This ability made people feel valued and created loyal supporters. Principle 4. Be a good listener and encourage others to talk about themselves. The fourth principle addresses one of the most underrated social skills: listening. Carnegie argues that being a good listener is one of the highest compliments you can pay to another person. When you listen attentively, you're saying that the other person's thoughts and feelings matter to you. Most people are poor listeners, because they're too focused on what they want to say next. They interrupt, change the subject, or wait impatiently for the other person to finish. In contrast, truly effective listeners give their complete attention, ask thoughtful questions, and encourage the speaker to continue. Carnegie shares numerous examples of people who became wildly successful simply by listening well. One businessman attributed his success to the fact that he listened more than he talked, allowing clients to explain their needs fully before he offered solutions. Principle 5. Talk in terms of the other person's interests. The fifth principle builds on earlier ideas about seeing things from the other person's perspective. Whenever possible, talk about what interests them, not what interests you. This requires preparation and genuine curiosity. Carnegie illustrates this with the example of Theodore Roosevelt, who would prepare for meetings with visitors by reading up on subjects he knew interested them. Whether the visitor was a cowboy, a politician, or a naturalist, Roosevelt could discuss topics they cared about, making them feel valued and creating strong connections. The practical application involves doing your homework. If you're meeting someone for business, learn about their company, their industry, and their challenges. In social situations, ask questions to discover their hobbies and passions, then engage genuinely with those topics. Principle 6. Make the other person feel important, and do it sincerely. The final principle in this section ties together many of the previous ideas. Make people feel important, but do it sincerely. This is perhaps the most fundamental human desire, and satisfying it creates powerful bonds. Carnegie emphasizes that the technique must be absolutely sincere. People can detect insincere flattery immediately. The key is to find things you genuinely admire or appreciate about the person, and express those feelings honestly. This might involve complimenting their work, acknowledging their expertise, asking for their advice, or simply treating them with respect and dignity. Little courtesies like saying, "I'm sorry to trouble you," "Would you be so kind as to," or "Thank you," can make people feel valued. Part 3. How to win people to your way of thinking. The third section focuses on persuasion and influence. Carnegie presents 12 principles for changing people's minds without creating resentment or ill will. Principle 1. Avoid arguments. Carnegie's first principle for winning people to your way of thinking seems paradoxical. Avoid arguments. He argues that you can't win an argument. If you lose the argument, you lose. If you win the argument, you still lose because you've made the other person feel inferior, hurt their pride, and created resentment. Carnegie shares a story about Benjamin Franklin, who made it a rule never to contradict others directly or assert anything too strongly. Franklin learned that when you argue with people, you may occasionally win a debate, but you'll never win the person. The alternative to arguing is to listen respectfully, look for areas of agreement, admit when you might be wrong, and promise to think carefully about the other person's perspective. This approach disarms opposition and opens minds to new ideas. Principle 2. Show respect for others' opinions and never say, "You're wrong." Carnegie's second principle follows naturally from the first. Never tell someone they're wrong. Even if you're absolutely certain they're mistaken, directly saying so will only make them defensive and more committed to their position. Instead, Carnegie suggests phrases like, "I may be wrong, I frequently am. Let's examine the facts together." This approach shows respect, opens dialogue, and makes the other person more receptive to considering alternative viewpoints. The underlying principle is that people's opinions are tied to their ego and self-image. When you attack their opinions, you attack them personally. By respecting their opinions, even while presenting alternative perspectives, you preserve their dignity and make change possible. Principle 3. If you're wrong, admit it, quickly and emphatically. Carnegie's third principle might seem counterintuitive in a section about winning people to your way of thinking, but it's incredibly powerful. When you realize you're wrong, admit it immediately and enthusiastically before the other person has a chance to criticize you. This technique accomplishes several things. First, it disarms the other person, taking away their opportunity to attack you. Second, it demonstrates humility and honesty, which are admirable qualities. Third, it often prompts the other person to minimize your error and even defend you. Carnegie shares personal examples of using this technique, including times when he admitted fault to police officers and angry clients. In each case, his willing admission of error transformed a potentially hostile situation into a friendly one. Principle 4. Begin in a friendly way. The fourth principle recognizes that the tone you set at the beginning of an interaction often determines the outcome. If you begin in a hostile or aggressive manner, the other person will respond defensively. If you begin in a friendly way, you create cooperation. Carnegie illustrates this with Aesop's fable of the sun and the wind competing to remove a traveler's coat. The wind blew harder and harder, but this only made the traveler hold his coat tighter. The sun simply shone warmly, and the traveler voluntarily removed his coat. Gentleness and friendliness accomplish what force cannot. The practical application is simple. No matter how justified your anger or how right you are, begin your interactions in a friendly, warm manner. This creates an atmosphere where productive discussion can occur. Principle 5. Get the other person saying, yes, yes. Immediately, Carnegie's fifth principle involves a subtle psychological technique. Begin your conversation by emphasizing things on which you agree. Ask questions that the other person will answer yes to. This gets them in an agreeable frame of mind. The reasoning is that once someone has said yes several times, they have psychological momentum in that direction. It becomes harder for them to suddenly say no when you eventually reach the point where you disagree. This technique, sometimes called the Socratic method, involves asking a series of questions that lead the person to your conclusion through their own reasoning. Rather than making statements that the person can reject, you're guiding them through questions they agree with. Principle 6. Let the other person do a great deal of the talking. The sixth principle, again, emphasizes listening over talking. Carnegie argues that most people trying to win others to their way of thinking talk too much. Instead, let the other person do most of the talking. Let them express their ideas, vent their feelings, and share their perspective. People are more committed to ideas they've expressed themselves. By letting them talk, you learn their true objections, understand their perspective, and allow them to talk themselves into your way of thinking. You also make them feel important and heard. Carnegie shares examples of salespeople and negotiators who succeeded primarily by asking questions and listening, rather than delivering lengthy pitches. Principle 7. Let the other person feel the idea is theirs. The seventh principle takes the previous one further. Not only should you let the other person talk, but you should guide the conversation so they arrive at your conclusion and feel like it was their idea all along. People have much more faith in ideas they've discovered themselves than in ideas handed to them. By asking questions, providing information, and letting them reach the conclusion, you create genuine buy-in rather than reluctant compliance. Carnegie provides examples of business leaders who successfully implemented this technique, turning potential opponents into enthusiastic supporters simply by letting them believe the good ideas were theirs. Principle 8. Try honestly to see things from the other person's point of view. The eighth principle is fundamental to all the others. Make a genuine effort to understand why the other person thinks and acts as they do. What are their motivations, their fears, their desires? What experiences have shaped their perspective? Carnegie argues that understanding someone's point of view doesn't mean you have to agree with it, but it allows you to address their real concerns rather than arguing against your own interpretation of their position. This principle requires empathy and imagination. You must step out of your own perspective and genuinely try to inhabit theirs. When you do this successfully, you often find that their position makes more sense than you initially thought, and you can find common ground you didn't know existed. Principle 9. Be sympathetic to the other person's ideas and desires. The ninth principle involves expressing genuine sympathy for the other person's perspective. Carnegie provides a powerful phrase: I don't blame you one iota for feeling as you do. If I were you, I would undoubtedly feel just as you do. This simple acknowledgement can transform hostile situations. When people feel that you understand and sympathize with their position, they become less defensive and more open to hearing your perspective. The key, again, is sincerity. You must genuinely try to understand why they feel as they do and acknowledge that their feelings are valid given their perspective and circumstances. Principle 10. Appeal to the nobler motives. Carnegie's 10th principle recognizes that most people want to see themselves as honest, fair, and principled. Even when people act selfishly, they usually justify their actions with noble motives. Carnegie suggests that you can often change behavior by appealing to these nobler motives. For example, instead of accusing someone of dishonesty, assume they want to be honest and appeal to that desire. Instead of assuming someone is being unfair, assume they want to be fair and ask them to help you find a fair solution. This technique gives people a path to change their behavior while maintaining their self-image as good people. It's much more effective than accusing them of bad motives, which only makes them defensive. Principle 11. Dramatize your ideas. 11th principle addresses the reality that in our modern world, merely stating truth is not enough. You must make your ideas vivid, interesting, and dramatic. People are bombarded with information, and only the most striking ideas break through. Carnegie uses examples from advertising and sales to illustrate this point. Successful communicators use demonstrations, stories, visual aids, and theatrical elements to make their points memorable and compelling. This doesn't mean being dishonest or exaggerating. It means presenting true ideas in the most engaging and memorable way possible. Principle 12. Throw down a challenge. The final principle in this section involves appealing to people's competitive spirit. When all else fails, throw down a challenge. People love to excel, to prove themselves, to win. A challenge appeals to this fundamental drive. Carnegie shares examples of business leaders who motivated employees not through money or pressure, but by creating competitions and challenges that appealed to their desire to excel. This technique works because it transforms a task from something imposed from outside into a personal test of skill and ability. People will often work much harder to meet a challenge than they will for direct rewards. Trotto, Part 4. Be a leader. How to change people without giving offense or arousing resentment. The final section addresses leadership and the delicate art of changing people's behavior without creating resentment. Carnegie presents 9 principles for effective leadership. Principle 1. Begin with praise and honest appreciation. When you need to address someone's mistakes or shortcomings, Carnegie advises beginning with sincere praise and appreciation. This creates a positive emotional context that makes the person more receptive to criticism. This is similar to the old sandwich technique: praise, criticism, praise. However, Carnegie emphasizes that the praise must be genuine, not just a setup for the criticism. You should truly appreciate the person's positive qualities before addressing problems. Principle 2. Call attention to mistakes indirectly. Rather than directly pointing out errors, Carnegie suggests a more subtle approach. Call attention to mistakes indirectly through questions, suggestions, or by highlighting what's right and letting the person discover what's wrong. For example, instead of saying, "This report is full of errors," you might say, "This report has some excellent points. I wonder if we might double-check the figures in section 3 to make sure they're as strong as the rest of your analysis." This indirect approach preserves the person's pride while still addressing the problem. Principle 3. Talk about your own mistakes before criticizing others. Carnegie's third leadership principle involves sharing your own failures before addressing someone else's. This humility accomplishes several things. It shows you're human and makes you relatable. It demonstrates that mistakes are learning opportunities, and it makes the other person less defensive. For example, you might say, "When I was first learning this process, I made many of the same mistakes I'm seeing here. Let me share what I learned." This creates a mentor-student dynamic rather than a superior-subordinate one. Principle 4. Ask questions instead of giving direct orders. Instead of commanding people, Carnegie suggests asking questions that lead them to discover the right course of action themselves. Questions are less threatening than orders, and people are more committed to actions they've decided upon themselves. For example, instead of saying, "Redo this report," you might ask, "Do you think we could strengthen this section?" Or, "What might make this analysis more compelling?" These questions engage the person's thinking and give them ownership of the solution. Principle 5. Let the other person save face. Carnegie's fifth principle addresses the importance of preserving people's dignity. Even when someone has made a serious mistake, find a way to let them save face. Don't publicly humiliate them or take away their self-respect. This might involve criticizing in private, attributing the mistake to circumstances rather than character, or focusing on future improvement rather than past failure. The goal is to change behavior while preserving the person's sense of worth. Carnegie argues that a few minutes of thinking about how to help someone save face can make the difference between creating a resentful enemy and a grateful friend. Principle 6. Praise every improvement. The sixth principle involves recognizing and celebrating progress, no matter how small. Instead of waiting for perfection, acknowledge every improvement. This positive reinforcement encourages continued growth. Carnegie shares research on behavioral psychology, showing that praise is more effective than punishment in shaping behavior. When you praise improvement, you reinforce the positive behavior and encourage more of it. The key is to be specific and sincere. Don't just say, "Good job." Say exactly what improved and why it matters. This helps the person understand what to continue doing. Principle 7. Give the other person a fine reputation to live up. To Carnegie's seventh principle involves a powerful psychological technique. Give people a reputation to live up to. If you want someone to develop a particular quality, treat them as if they already possess it. For example, if you want someone to be more responsible, express your confidence in their responsibility. If you want them to be honest, treat them as an honest person. People tend to live up to the expectations others have of them. This technique sometimes called the Pygmalion effect, has been demonstrated in numerous psychological studies. When teachers expect students to excel, they often do. When leaders express confidence in employees, they typically rise to meet that confidence. Principle 8. Use encouragement and make faults seem easy to correct. When someone is struggling with a problem or a weakness, Carnegie advises using encouragement and making the fault seem easy to correct. Instead of emphasizing how difficult change will be, emphasize how capable the person is and how simple the fix can be. For example, instead of saying, "This is going to be really hard for you to change," you might say, "You've already shown you can do this in other areas. I'm confident this will come naturally once you focus on it." This creates a positive expectation and gives the person confidence that they can succeed. Principle 9. Make the other person happy about doing what you suggest. The final principle ties together many of the others. When asking someone to do something, make them genuinely happy about doing it. Show them how it will benefit them, appeal to their interests and values, and create enthusiasm for the task. This might involve explaining how the task will help them develop new skills, advance their career, or contribute to something they care about. The goal is to transform a request from an obligation into an opportunity. Carnegie shares numerous examples of leaders who successfully motivated people not through authority or pressure, but by making them genuinely excited about the work they were doing. Conclusion. Bringing it all together. Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People provides a comprehensive framework for improving every relationship in your life. While the book was written in 1936, its principles are timeless because they're based on fundamental human psychology. The core insight running through all of Carnegie's principles is this: people are primarily interested in themselves. They care about their own needs, desires, and feelings. The secret to influence is not to focus on what you want, but to understand what others want and help them get it. This doesn't mean being manipulative or insincere. Quite the opposite. Carnegie repeatedly emphasizes that all these techniques must be applied with genuine sincerity. People can detect fake interest, insincere flattery, and manipulative behavior. The techniques only work when they come from a place of authentic interest in others' well-being. Implementing Carnegie's principles requires practice and conscious effort. These behaviors don't come naturally to most people because we're all naturally self-centered. We think about our own needs, our own perspectives, and our own desires. Training yourself to genuinely focus on others requires deliberate practice. Start by choosing one or two principles and consciously applying them in your daily interactions. Perhaps begin with smiling more genuinely and using people's names. Once those become natural, add more principles. Over time, these behaviors will become habits, and you'll notice dramatic changes in how people respond to you. The benefits of mastering these principles extend far beyond professional success. They improve your friendships, strengthen your family relationships, and make you a more pleasant person to be around. They reduce conflict, increase cooperation, and create more joy in your daily interactions. Perhaps most importantly, Carnegie's approach represents a shift from a competitive, zero-sum view of human interaction to a cooperative, win-win perspective. When you genuinely care about helping others get what they want, when you make them feel important and appreciated, when you approach conflicts with empathy and understanding, everybody wins. Remember, success in life is not primarily about what you know or even what you can do. It's about how well you work with other people. Master the principles in this book, and you'll have mastered one of life's most important skills. Thank you for listening to this summary of How to Win Friends and Influence People. I encourage you to read the full book to get Carnegie's rich examples and detailed illustrations of each principle. Even better, commit to applying these principles in your own life. Start today by genuinely appreciating someone, by seeing things from their perspective, or by making them feel important. These small actions, repeated consistently, will transform your relationships and your life.